Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for The Sandman. Your waking world is shaped by dreams. Hello, I'm J-Law, but you can call me Justin, and this is our spoiler-free review for The Sandman, which hits the streaming platform as of today, August 5th. Special thanks, as always, to our friends at Netflix Canada for giving us the opportunity to see this series early for review. If you're joining us for the first time, well, we are Geekcentric, a podcast covering the world of movies, TV shows, toys, collectibles, gaming, and all things geek-centric. Joining me for today's review, he is a walking dream or a nightmare, depending on who you ask. Mr. Nate Shelton, how are you?
Wow. I don't like sand. It's coarse, it's rough, it's irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Bro, wrong franchise, okay?
Sorry. You brought up sand. I got sand on the brain. I got a sandy brain. I like to think I'm more of a dream everywhere I go. I don't...
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe to some people, I'm a nightmare.
Well, that's why I left it open-ended. Dream, nightmare, You never know. Well, I'm excited to talk to you about this series, which is on Netflix as of today. But before we get into what the show's about and all the details, I'd love to know what is your experience with The Sandman? Because obviously this is coming from a very popular comic series, but even before that, it was a folklore story that was very much part of fantasy stories and whatnot, and Neil Gaiman, who ended up taking this story and adapting it for the comics, 75-part comic book series with DC Comics. So it has an extensive history, which is why the series, I guess, is made. But have you read anything about Sandman prior to watching this series?
I really haven't. I think, it's interesting. I have like a distinct memory in my mind of standing in a Chapters. You know how we've all stood in a Chapters before, just looking to spend money because you're surrounded by so many wonderful things. But I just remember, going through the graphic novel section, and the cover. Just the cover of the omnibus for the artwork that is done through the Sandman comic books. I remember that distinctly, and I remember always being drawn to it, always being like, I got to pick that up. I got to check that out. I've heard so many great things, and I never got around to it. I never did. But I do know that it is very much loved. But no, I never went beyond the cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, likewise. I actually have not read the comic book series as well, but I am aware of the importance that Sandman has into pop culture, into the comic book world. I know Neil Gaiman's series was well received, and people have loved it and have, garnered it as like a must-read series of comics. So I'm happy that we got a first look at this series that definitely does its due diligence at exploring the world of the Sandman. Let's get our listeners up to speed first before we get into all of this. As the synopsis reads, there is another world that waits for all of us when we close our eyes and sleep, a place called the Dreaming, where the Sandman, master of dreams, played by Tom Sturridge, gives shape to all of our deepest fears and fantasies. But when Dream is unexpectedly captured and held prisoner for a century, his absence sets off a series of events that will change both the dreaming and the waking worlds forever. To restore order, Dream must journey across different worlds and timelines to mend the mistakes he's made during his vast existence, revisiting old friends and foes and meeting new entities, both cosmic and human, along the way. Based on the beloved award-winning DC Comics series written by Neil Gaiman, The Sandman is a rich, character-driven blend of myth and dark fantasy woven together over the course of over 10 epic chapters following Dream's many adventures. Developed and executive produced by Gaiman and showrunner Alan Heinberg and David S. Goyer. And apart from Tom Sturridge playing Dream, this series has a stacked cast. Nate, why don't you get our listeners up to date with who's starring in this series?
You're giving me the tough job here. Okay, we got, apologies if I mispronounce any of these. We've got Boyd Holbrook, Patton Oswalt, Vivian Acheampong, Gwendolyn Christie, Charles Dance, Jenna Coleman, David Thewlis, Stephen Fry, Kirby Howell-Baptiste, Mason Alexander Park, Donna Preston, Vanessa Semanyai. We've got John Cameron Mitchell, Asim Chowdhury, Sanjeev Bhaskar, Jolie Richardson, Naeem Walsh, Sandra James Young, and Razain Jamal.
You know, the one person that they forgot in this cast, because this is official from the media press kit, Mark Hamill's also in this, and he voices
there
a
you
character.
go.
So
I knew Sand made it in here somehow. I knew we got some Sand from that universe in this universe. Okay, cool.
All right. Well, with that all out of the way, let's get into talking about this series, and let's talk about the story. Let's talk about what we got here, because it's obviously, again, as we were mentioning, this is a very expansive world that means a lot to a lot of people who love the comic book. So to see it explored in the visual medium has been long overdue. And I'm just wondering if there could have been another way to approach it, because I think from a pacing standpoint, this series feels like it's 10 episodes, but within those 10 episodes, they feel very broken up. So the first episode feels very much like an origin story, whereas 2, 3, and 4 seem like their own set of 3 episodes, and 5 and 6 are kind of like these sort of side stories, if you will.
Yeah,
and then we come back. Yeah, capsule episodes. And then we come back for the remaining 4 episodes, and there we get the sort of final act. And this is a really interesting approach with how they've kind of devised these 10 chapters. I think there's a lack of connectivity though throughout. I really enjoyed those capsule episodes though. I think those smaller, more focused episodes really stand out over top of these large scale scope episodes that are trying to build the world and build the lore. I think it gets too big because I think it's trying to fast track stuff. Like it feels like they're trying to move things forward so that the audience can understand and, appreciate where the story is inevitably going. But I think, again, as we always talk about, pacing seems to be very prevalent throughout these episodes as being a bit of an issue.
Yeah, I think, chapter 5 and chapter 6 of this show was kind of, as soon as we got to those episodes, I remember we were talking about it, Justin, as I was going through it, and I'm like, I really am not feeling this show during the first 4 episodes. And as soon as 5 hit, I was like, wait, what is this? And then 6 happens, and I'm like, what is this? Like in chapter 5, it's we won't spoil too much, but it's centered around like a diner. It's in one location. They do really cool stuff where like throughout the episode the lighting just changes to effectively change the overall mood of the characters on the screen, and then chapter 6 we get to, again, as we said, we get to see Death's story and learn a little bit about her, and then we also get this really interesting thing of like a character that the Sandman gets to visit throughout the centuries, and it's just one of those things where both of those episodes had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I feel like if this show did more of that, it would have worked a lot better, at least for myself. And again, I'm wondering if that's just because I'm not a big Sandman fan. I was so much more intrigued by these side stories, and also the fact that like Eric Kripke was originally attached to do this series, to write the series, and I think that would have been perfect, because say what you will about a lot of the different seasons of Supernatural and how that show has gone on maybe way too long, or ran for too long. It's ended now. But I will say, with Supernatural, some of the best episodes of Supernatural were those capsule episodes, were those episodes where they just focused on a small story to tell, and then sometimes those characters would pop up in future episodes or future arcs. But I don't know. It was just really weird for me getting to episode 5 and 6, and for especially episode 5 being probably my favorite of the season, and our main character's really not even in it, and that's just one of those things where I did feel that disconnect. So coming back to that character for the last 4 episode arc, I was really happy that we did get, kind of a focus on Rose Walker in those 4 episodes, because I was more interested in her than I was with Dream. So again, it's just one of those things where maybe I'm just not used to that method of storytelling, of sort of having our main character sort of not be as interesting so that we can he can be that vessel for the audience. But I don't know.
Well, especially when the show's called The Sandman, you think that it's very much going to be focused on him, and rightfully so. There are aspects that focus on him and his importance to this world. But I'm totally with you. I feel like the supporting cast definitely do shine in this series and actually help build out the world a little bit more than I think Sandman does in some instances. But speaking of the world, do you want to talk about what we saw and the visual effects of what it is? Because I feel like there are pluses to some of it, but there are definitely some overt, like, that's a green screen. This feels very non-authentic, if you will.
Sure. Well, when I'm when I say that I was captivated by the different covers of the different comic books for the Sandman or the omnibus covers, like these are drawings, and sometimes they were done with like rough, sketchy lines and things like that, and so that totally works. It's tricky when you get into a show and immediately, you notice a green screen or a blue screen. And granted, I think the episodes we got said that they might have been unfinished, but I kind of checked out. We're recording this. The show is out now, and we're recording this, and I checked it out on Netflix, and it still looks pretty much the same. Where basically the creativity of the world, everything that came from Neil Gaiman's brain, totally, absolutely phenomenal. Like, it's so creative. It's so interesting. The execution is where it really faltered. And I know, don't get me wrong, this show has been taken forever to get to screen, right? And so Sandman fans are just appreciative at this point to just have it on screen, whether or not it looks a little bit like CGI from the early 2000s. But it's just one of those things where, and I get it, it's like a made for TV style budget. I'm not sure the budget on this, but I did find that a lot of the times where I was intrigued by the characters and the character design and the world design, any of the CG characters, the moment they were on screen, Mark Hamill's pumpkin head pulled me out of it, right? Seeing, I think Mervyn, it pulled me out of it. Or there's like a dragon at one point that I saw, or whatever it was, and it pulls you out of. Again, you're looking at this and you want to be invested and brought into this world and entranced by it. It's just hard to do that when the CG is so rough. And again, I'm not saying it's easy to do, but I think the only CG character that really worked for me was Matthew the Raven. I think Patton Oswalt did a great job at actually bringing some levity to the series, because again, the way that Dream is written doesn't do it at all. so to have Patton Oswalt and kind of be that for him, I thought the Crow was animated, or the Raven was animated really well. Actually, I think it was a puppet. The way that they did it.
I think it was a puppet at times.
Okay,
yeah, because you could kind of tell at certain points that it was definitely a puppet, and then at other points you could tell that it was probably a little bit more CGI'd. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that even to inject a little bit of practicality would have gone a long way. Again, you'll see some amazing scale of the kingdom from Dream, and it is very captivating, but it does feel very artificial. It just doesn't feel tactile and very much a real space. It does feel like it is very much a dream. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but
right.
I feel like it should have felt a little bit more like a lived-in world that felt very of its maker.
But a dream, I wake up from dreams when I realize I'm in a dream. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like that's a big thing. It's like I'm in a dream, I'm dreaming, I wake up. So that's kind of how I felt like with a lot of these visuals. Like it woke me up, and I don't want to be there. I want to be in the world of the dreaming. I want to see these characters, and I don't know. You got to imagine COVID probably put a big strain on these different visual effects artists. We're hearing so much in the news about different visual effects houses and companies throughout Hollywood who are being stretched and crunched, and everything going on with like Marvel and what have you. And so, I can only imagine some of the crazy stuff that might have happened to elicit this. But it is something as a viewer that still stood out to me, unfortunately, for the worse.
I also really enjoyed the level of gore that was kind of featured throughout. Like
Yeah.
there were some kind of like some gross stuff, and it's funny, I didn't know that Kripke was attached to do this series, but you can imagine, obviously, with the experience of Boys, how much bolder it would have gone. And at times, like there's certain moments again that they do lean into the gore, which felt not necessarily unusual for Netflix, but it definitely felt a little bit more mature than other stuff that we've gotten from Netflix. Like it definitely does speak to a more mature audience. That being said, I do feel like they could have pushed it even more and really, really made this series stand out as being like their own Boys series. But maybe that was kind of what made them pull it back. They want to at least interject a little bit of that terror and that horror, but not necessarily go full tilt like The Boys, which just sometimes can be an exploding penis. So
right,
that's just what it is.
no exploding penises. But I think even in the sense of like you're talking about the maturity level and the way that they go dark, I think they are gonna, if in some of these episodes there's stuff on the screen that I've never seen on TV before, and I think they and part of that has to do probably with Neil Gaiman's creative writing that they're bringing in and storytelling and ideas. But at the same time, like those moments are what really got me to want a season 2.
For sure. Okay, well, let's get into talking about our cast, and let's kick things off talking about our main character, Tom Sturridge as Dream. He was so like they nailed the look for him. I found like they really did nail the look. I think it was really up to him to obviously define the character and sort of have this. How would you describe his voice, Nate?
Yeah, he's very monotone, very stoic.
Monotone, yes, stoic.
Right.
There's some good words.
And I think you think about it, right? He's the guy of dreams, but at times there were moments with his performance and moments with some of his dialogue that I was like, yeah, I could probably start dreaming right now if you keep talking, how slowly you're talking. And I get it. I get that that's part of the character. Again, I know for a lot of folks who are listening to this, there's going to be, we might have some thoughts that might not necessarily fit with yours if you are a huge fan of the Sandman comics. I think there are definitely going to be aspects to this cast and these performances and this story that are going to kind of go over maybe our heads as we haven't read it before. But
sure.
I think Tom Sturridge was fine. I wasn't as intrigued by his character as I was a lot of the other characters. I think Kirby Howell-Baptiste as Death is one that I want to call out as
fantastic.
Just such a beautiful, the way that she carries herself, the way that she portrays that character, and the way that character is written is absolutely gorgeous. And I also wanted to, I think you and I were talking quite a bit about as soon as we saw her, Vanessa Samanyai, who's kind of in the later part of this season. I thought she was a fantastic choice, and I thought she gave a really excellent performance for some of the dialogue she was given. And I think you can say that about a lot of this cast. I think there's a lot of really memorable characters that came in, and I kind of will say, and I don't know again how much this has to do with Tom Sturridge's performance as Dream or just the way he was written. I found I was so much more interested in all these other characters than I was Dream himself, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think because he played the role very, as you said, stoic and monotone, that made it hard for us to connect with his character. Whereas all of these outstanding supporting characters who played their roles so authentically, it was easier to connect with them and really wanted to see their stories unfold, such as our antagonist that is played by Boyd Holbrook, the Corinthian. He was outstanding. He was so confident in his demeanor and in his approach, and understanding his motives was very easy based on how he presented himself. You mentioned, a lot of these characters pop in. There are some characters that just pop in for an episode, and that's very much it. So, to look at some of this cast and think that they might be very integral to the story, just take that with a grain of salt. I think that there's a lot of world building, as we've discussed, that will very much hint at where they can go next.
Yeah, I think like Jenna Coleman for instance, plays Johanna Constantine, who's like a really fresh take on the John Constantine character, and I guess that's pulled directly from the book, I think. And I guess the biggest aspect to this is thinking about this series and thinking about these characters and how big the comic book is. I'm almost wondering if that was something that was directly adapted from the comic book, was this idea of Dream is going to be the reader's sort of vessel to be brought into this world. So let's not make him as interesting, I guess, so that all these other characters and the parts of the different areas of this world will, those are the areas that we want to focus on more. I just felt like this season didn't do that enough, or was kind of wavering between wanting to really be focused on Dream and then at times bring in these other characters, where I think if it had stuck to one idea or the other, right? I think we were talking about the fact that, like, from a story standpoint, it felt like they sort of split this season up into 3 separate sort of approaches to how to do the Sandman show. And I felt like that kind of didn't fully work for me from a pacing perspective and from a perspective of like just a balance throughout the season. I also wanted to just kind of jump in regarding like the writing of the show. I think, like, from a dialogue standpoint, I think there are moments where they're not saying anything at all, and it's some of the most beautiful, it's some of the most beautiful sequences, I think, with, like, especially around the character of Death, that I've ever seen in a show, right? Like, it's absolutely gorgeous, and the way that they do it is fantastic. But then there's other moments where, and again, I get it, Dream is written in the comic books, I'm sure. Again, I haven't read them, but I can imagine that he's written to be overtly poetic, right? The world that they're dealing with, the scale of the concepts that they're trying to somewhat humanize through these characters. I think it's just when you get your main character that we're following, and I'm just sort of bored if he talks for more than a minute. I wasn't captivated as much as I thought that I should be. I don't know. I felt like the dialogue was very hit or miss for me throughout the entirety of the season as well.
Yeah, I think that, again, that goes back to what these 10 chapters are meant to do in terms of setting up, I guess, again, a larger universe that will have audiences wanting to come back and see more stories told. Because, of course, this is the first season. Netflix's track record, we don't know what the future holds for the Sandman, but you have to imagine, with the investment that they've put into this, that they would at least want to get 2 seasons out and see. And I think most people are really going to enjoy this. And maybe, to the point of what you were saying, for both of us, being that we haven't read the comics or feel overly connected to it, maybe that's part of the reason why there's a little bit of a disconnect for us. But that being said, I think this is perfect time for us to get into our wrap up and our final thoughts, which we'll be rating on a scale of 1 to 5 rubies. Why don't you kick things off there, Nate?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think this sort of felt, as I was saying, like 3 different takes on what the show could be in one season. I think the origin story and what follows as a result in the first 4 episodes, and then we get the great capsule episodes in the middle, and then the final arc of the season. It felt like a more modern approach of what you'd expect from, like, almost like a reboot in 2022 of the Sandman, right? Where
Sure.
You've got the younger character coming in to sort of, lead forward in this story. And overall, I just think the show is at its strongest when it does focus on the more creative world around Dream rather than Dream himself. I think with us having access to, as we've been told, unfinished versions of these episodes. I mean, I think overall the show is at its strongest when its focuses on the more creative world around Dream and the characters around Dream rather than Dream himself. Again, with the CG sort of taking me out of the dreaming as much as I wanted to be there, I felt like that just, unfortunately, outside of Matthew the Crow, nothing was really that well animated or done. And overall, I think this show could benefit from more episodes. I know it sounds crazy because in a streaming world where we're starting to get used to, like, 6-episode run. Okay, great. Fine. 8-episode run. Awesome. Cool. I think we're maybe starting to get back to, like, this felt like it should have been old TV. Like, it felt like it should have been like an 18, even a 23 episode run. And I know that's a little more difficult to do these days, but I would rather keep the CG the quality it is and get more of these unique episodes, these unique stories, these capsule episodes throughout the season, rather than just sort of two of them and then they go back to the traditional story arc storyline. So yeah, I do think that, again, like, a show called The Sandman, maybe if it was called The Dreaming or something along those lines, and it did focus on all of these characters, including the Sandman, maybe that would give, us a little bit more time to breathe with that character and actually see a bit more character growth for him. But I think, going into the show up until episode 5, I was at a 2.5. I'm not going to lie. I was bored. I was sleepy. I was falling asleep, ready to dream. And then as soon as we got to those middle episodes, and then even the final arc, it brought me up to a solid almost a 4, but I'm at a 3.5 out of 5 rubies. There you go. Awesome. Sorry, I was a little sandy on that one.
That's fine. No, I think, though, there's a lot there that I agree with, in that I feel like the pacing and the way that the 10 episodes were looked at was very unique. But I also think that it hindered on the experience. I feel like, given the importance that Sandman has in the pop culture comic world and the folklore, it is great that we are finally getting to see the visualization of the story told, and obviously on a huge scale. But I think the series is far more interested in building the universe and the stories that are going to be told, rather than the characters that are in it. Very much like we were talking about, like how the Sandman doesn't really feel as integral. Like, we see his importance, but it's very much the other characters that we were obviously far more interested in, like the Corinthian, like Stephen Fry's Gilbert, like Rose. What I mean? Like, these were all fantastic characters that were featured throughout this series that were standouts. I don't agree, though, that we needed more episodes. I just think that these 10 episodes and the way they looked at it could have been handled better. And I think, again, it's really serving as a stepping stone for what I think could have been explored in further seasons. I think a lot happens in these first 10 episodes that, again, shows that they're really trying to overachieve. But these smaller episodes, those capsule episodes, chapter 5 and chapter 6, those were the highlights for me. These very focused, almost, if you could say, character-esque style episodes really stood out to me as being the highlights. First episode is like we said, an origin story that explores an entire century in one episode. Yeah. Right. And I think that's just a lot to do. Now, granted, it sets the groundwork for what needs to happen, but we could have spent a little bit more time with the people in that century to maybe have some sort of connection, because as much as we're talking about Rose and Gilbert in the first episode, there's some characters that have some emotional development, but we really don't get to feel that. We don't get to spend time with that. So It just feels like it's very much just a setup purpose. Again, I think this series is a good jumping off point, and I hope that they can come back in a season 2 that feels a little bit more refined and focused, and less concerned about trying to establish everything else around it. Because I get it, like, you're looking at the things that Marvel are doing, and even DC, and just the idea of universe building properties, and Sandman has that strength to do that. So this first season really does need to set that bar. I just feel like, again, character story were a little bit sacrificed in the hopes of building a world that audiences would want to come back. And I just don't know, like, again, I think some fans that really love Sandman are going to enjoy this, but maybe for myself, because I'm not necessarily as connected to the original source material, I'm also going to be giving this a 3.5 out of 5 rubies.
Yeah, I think if you can get past the first 4 episodes and then watch these capsule episodes, you're gonna see stuff that you haven't seen on TV before, and I think that just speaks to the creativity of these writers and of Neil Gaiman in particular. Like you said, if you're a fan of the Sandman, you're gonna watch this. You're probably gonna really dig it. If you're not, I think give it a chance. Go get through
Definitely give it a
through
chance,
some of the slower parts, get through some of those visuals, and get to these episodes that we're talking about, because I think they might change your mind around. And yeah, I really do hope that Netflix doesn't pull a Netflix and cancel this show. I think it's I hope it does well enough that we do get to see these characters in this world again, and maybe flesh them out even more with 10 more episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Definitely give this a shot, because, again, if you can work past those first 4, even 3 episodes, you'll enjoy it. Cool. Well, that is it. We hope you enjoyed this spoiler-free review for The Sandman. And if you did, feel free to subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to write into the show and let us know your thoughts of this series, well, you can reach out to us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or if that feels like a living nightmare, well, you can reach out to us on Twitter at GeekcentricYT or on Instagram at wearegeekcentric. Keep in mind, we also have a ton of other great episodes covering the latest movies and TV shows out now, and a lot of these episodes we dropped this week. We dropped our spoiler-free review for Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie, which is on Netflix as of today, August 5th. We also dropped our spoiler-free review for the Apple original film and Skydance animation film Luck, which is also it's out now on Apple TV Plus. And we also dropped our spoiler-free review for the Hulu original film from 20th Century Studios called Prey, which is available on Hulu. And if you're in Canada, it's available on Disney Plus as of today. So a lot of content coming out today. And we have all reviews spoiler-free to help you set up before you sit down and enjoy any of those. Also, this week we dropped our weekly episode of This Week in Geek, which we drop every Wednesday, where we bring you the latest news and trailer reactions. This past week, Kev, Nate, and Darcy discuss Andor being delayed yet again, but they also shared their excitement in and around the series finally hitting Disney Plus in September. Plus, they also had a first look at the Spirit Halloween movie, which is inbound for Halloween season in October. So go give those episodes a listen and a 5-star review if you don't mind. Nate, thank you so much for joining me for this dream walk of a review. I don't know. It might have been a bit of a nightmare, but who knows? Anyways, until next time, as we say,
love ya.
Peace.